So why are you desecrating churches?
Do you view Hamas as a terrorist organization?
What the hell was this? And you're calling me names is not going to stop me. I don't have to take orders from you about what I'm allowed to know or not know. I wasn't attacking. First of all, the core of it is, why is Israel killing Christians?
Yeah.
Who fund it? Americans fund Israel. And if you think you're going to get me into some semantic game about who's a terrorist and who's not a terrorist, killing people who committed no crime is wrong. Period. That's the basis of Christian belief. It's the basis of Western civilization. Dropping bombs on people who did nothing wrong is a crime. Period. Anti-Semite, obviously. I'm not even anti-Israel on some principled level. I'm an American, and I think it's not only fair, but my moral obligation to find out what the hell was this. And you're calling me names is not going to stop me, because I've been here my whole life, and my family's been here a long time. I don't have to take orders from you about what I'm allowed to know or not know, because it's my country. That's the kind of democratic spirit that informed this country my entire life until 9/11, after which it became a thought crime to ask obvious questions. And I'm just not going to play along, period.
What happened with Iran, where Donald Trump decided to attack Iran? What did you feel about that? Given that it ended so apparently quickly, do you think Trump was vindicated in his short, sharp strategy there by bombing Iran? Or do you think that this will come back and haunt him down the line?
That this focus on Iran is not actually connected to our national security. How many Shiite terror attacks have there been in the United States in my lifetime? Let me do the math. 0. So don't tell me that the greatest threat we face is Iran. That's a lie. You're telling it on behalf of a foreign power. Maybe they feel the greatest threat they face is Iran. It's not the greatest threat we face. It's not an endorsement of Iran, okay? Doesn't make me a simp for the Shiites. It just makes me an American who's trying to think clearly about what our problems are. And our problems would include tens of millions of foreign nationals living illegally in my country. Nobody knows their identities. They would include a collapsing economy that makes it very hard for my children to have children and live the life that they grew up with, and their friends and all American kids. It would include a drug crisis that's killed millions of Americans over the past 20, millions of Americans over the last 20 years. Iran is not even on the top 10 list. So you can scream at me all you want and call me names and call me a bigot or whatever, but there's no evidence to support that. And so if the energy of the U.S. government is focused on a threat that's not the primary threat to us, it is by definition ignoring threats that are. And that's a kind of negligence. And so I pointed that out. I was, roundly attacked. My family was attacked. Whatever. I don't care. It's true. And everyone kind of knows it's true. And being bullied by Ben Shapiro into pretending that it's not true, it's just not on the program for me at 56. I'm just not doing that anymore.
President Trump told reporters at the time that you had called him and apologized after you disagreed with the Israeli strikes on Iran. Is that true?
Stop for a second, because what you just watched is not a normal interview moment. This is Tucker Carlson refusing to do what almost every mainstream guest does when they sit across from Piers Morgan, which is play along with the script. The script goes like this: agree that Iran is the enemy, agree that asking questions about American foreign policy makes you dangerous, agree that any criticism of how US tax dollars are spent in the Middle East makes you an anti-Semite or a radical. Nod along. Stay in your lane. Tucker didn't do any of that, and the reason it's so uncomfortable to watch for some people is because deep down, the questions he's raising are questions that millions of Americans are already asking privately. They're just afraid to say it out loud. How many Shiite terror attacks have happened on American soil? 0. How many Americans have died from the drug crisis in the last 20 years? Millions. How many illegal crossings have there been? Tens of millions. And yet, where is the energy of the US government focused? That gap between where the attention goes and where the actual damage is, that is the story. That is always the story. And that is exactly what Opposite Angles exists to expose. We don't pick sides. We don't follow the establishment playbook. We ask the questions that make people uncomfortable, because those are always the most important ones. If that's the kind of analysis you've been looking for, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Opposite Angles right now and make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's keep going, because this conversation is about to get even more interesting.
I am a champion apologizer. I really believe in apologies. I have a lot to apologize for. I always have. We all do. I certainly do. But I also think that, you shouldn't proffer a false apology. You should apologize for things that you did wrong. And I didn't do anything wrong there. And I wasn't attacking anybody. I wasn't attacking Israel. I wasn't attacking. First of all, the core of it is, why is Israel killing Christians?
Yeah.
Who fund it? Americans fund Israel, fund the IDF. None of this would be possible without the United States and Christians in the United States. So they don't get to kill Christians. They don't get to block access to Christian holy sites. They don't get to allow people to spit on Christian clergy, and they definitely don't get permission from the country that funds them to blow up churches or Christian hospitals. And yet they have a lot. So what the hell is that? And that's my point. And in response, and I've asked that not as a hater of Israel, but as a Christian. So I've asked that pretty persistently for the last few years. I've really been attacked for it, but so what? And the response is, well, they're not actually, they're Hamas. And so my question is, well, you're telling me simultaneously that Hamas is a religious group, they're Islamic extremists, but they also have Christian members? Like, how does that work? It doesn't make any sense at all. That was my point. I'm not endorsing Hamas. I didn't say they're not a terror group. That's a freaking lie. I said, if you're telling me they're a jihadi group, they're political extremist groups, by the way. Fatah, there were tons of Arab political terror groups that were secular, that did have Christians in them, by the way, a lot of Christians who were displaced in 1948 and they were radical or whatever. But do you see what I'm saying? There's like a childish internal contradiction there and now they don't want to deal with it. So it's like, shut up, Hamas support.
Yeah, I think what got people going.
You stop killing Christians. You're not allowed to do that.
I understood the bigger
point.
What
is that?
Yeah, listen,
what's the justification for that?
I understood the bigger point you were making. Like I said,
I'm a Christian. I don't have to put up with this anymore. I don't have to sit back and be like,
I understand.
And all these Christian ministers in the United States are like, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
We can't complain about a government that we fund killing Christians. I don't know who's writing the rules here, but I'm not obeying them. I'm not attacking Israel. I'm not an anti-Semite. You don't get to kill Christians who have nothing to do with this. It's the world's only religion that is not only non-violent, but considers retaliation a sin. Turn the other cheek. That's the religion. So why are you killing these people? Why don't you give me a straight answer? And calling me names is not going to deter me.
I understand the bigger point you made, but like I said, you definitely say...
It's the only point I'm making.
You definitely said in passing that they seem more like a political organization. So do you want to clarify what you meant by that bit? You sure?
Hamas was funded by Israel to some extent. It's not a controversial statement. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's an established fact by the current prime minister. Took money, gave it to Hamas. I meant what I said, which is they are either, I'm not questioning whether they've committed violence. They have. I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to all violence, period. And I'm opposed to Hamas violence. I'm opposed to killing people. The question is, if you are telling me that they are inspired to kill because of their religious ideology, that is a different thing from people who are inspired to kill by their political ideology. Because if it's political, you can imagine an alliance with Christians. If it is a religious motivation, it is impossible to imagine, as I said in that clip, Christian accomplices. There weren't a lot of Christians supporting al-Qaeda because al-Qaeda was explicitly anti-Christian. So was ISIS. Fatah, which was, again, a radical or violence-prone Palestinian political organization, had Christian support. So which is it? That's my point. I was calling into question their lack of a coherent explanation for why Christians are being killed in a conflict that, from my perspective, doesn't seem to have anything to do with them. So why are you desecrating churches?
Do you view Hamas as a terrorist organization, as they've been prescribed in many countries, including the US?
He drew a direct line between American funding, American responsibility, and American accountability. The logic is simple. If the United States is the financial engine behind a military operation, then American citizens have not only the right, but the moral obligation to ask what that money is doing. That is not anti-Semitism. That is not radical jihadism. That is democracy. That is exactly the kind of civic engagement that the United States was built on, and that, as Tucker points out himself, quietly disappeared after September 11th. What replaced it was something much more dangerous: the idea that questioning your government's foreign policy choices is an act of betrayal. That loyalty to America means unconditional loyalty to every alliance America has ever formed, no matter the cost, no matter the consequences, no matter how many Americans are suffering at home. Tucker is rejecting that framework entirely, and Piers Morgan, representing exactly the kind of establishment media that enforces that framework, has no answer for it.
So why are you desecrating churches?
Do you view Hamas as a terrorist organization?
I view Hamas killing people, especially civilians, as horrifying, immoral, and wrong. And if you think you're going to get me into some semantic game about who's a terrorist and who's not a terrorist, Killing people who committed no crime is wrong. Period. That's the basis of Christian belief. It's the basis of Western civilization. Dropping bombs on people who did nothing wrong is a crime. Period. That is why we say we are better than the terrorists, because we don't kill people who did nothing wrong. And by definition, children haven't done anything wrong. So you are not allowed to kill them. And now there's an entire network of, not a television network, but a loosely aligned network, arguing that it's somehow wrong to say it's immoral to kill children. And I think it's immoral to kill children no matter who kills the children, whether it's the government of the United States, the government of Sri Lanka, the government of Belgium, the government of Israel, Hamas. It doesn't matter. It is immoral to kill people who haven't done anything wrong. That's why Hiroshima is a problem. That's why I've complained about Hiroshima. That's why the Nazis were bad. That's why everybody who murders innocents is wrong. And when did that become controversial? Like I said, I articulated that and was immediately attacked by all these, people on the so-called right. I was like, then what is the whole point? What is the point of living here or having this country if we endorse murdering people who committed no crime? How are we better than the people we supposedly hate? You can't get an answer. Oh, you're a radical jihadi. No, actually, I'm a Protestant Christian who hates radical jihadis. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. That is terrorism. Anybody who murders people who committed no crime is committing terrorism.
Does that include?
And if someone else can think,
does that include? Okay, so does that include Israel?
It includes anybody.
Does that include Israel?
It includes anybody.
No, but
anybody. But by the way, let me just say, it's so funny. Does that include Israel? It includes people I know personally in the United States.
Piers Morgan tried to trap Tucker into a simple yes or no. Is Hamas a terrorist organization? It sounds like a straightforward question, but Tucker immediately saw what was happening. It was a word game. A media trap designed to produce a clip, not a conversation. And Tucker refused to play. Instead, he did something remarkable. He flipped the entire frame. He defined terrorism on his own terms, clearly and without apology. The intentional killing of innocent people. No exceptions, no asterisks, no carve-outs for governments or armies or political allies. And then, and this is the part that got completely buried, he turned the question back around and asked something that nobody on that stage, nobody in that studio, and frankly almost nobody in mainstream media has been willing to answer directly. Why are churches being desecrated? Why are Christian holy sites being blocked? Why are Christian clergy being spat on? Why are Christian hospitals being destroyed? These are not rhetorical questions. These are not the talking points of a radical. These are the questions of a Christian man watching his faith's people suffer in a conflict that American tax dollars are directly funding, and being told he is not allowed to ask why. Tucker made it crystal clear. He is not anti-Israel on principle. He is not pro-Hamas. He is not endorsing violence from any side. What he is doing is applying the same moral standard to every actor in this conflict. If killing innocent people is wrong, and it is, then it is wrong for everyone. Hamas, the US government, Israel, everyone, no country, no matter how close an ally, gets a different set of rules. That consistency, that refusal to have one morality for some and a different morality for others, is exactly what Piers Morgan could not handle. Because the entire establishment media framework depends on people accepting that some innocent lives matter more than others depending on who took them. Tucker rejected that, completely, publicly.